When you look at the research, as a matter of fact, you will see that there is no correlation between a plan and any sort of success. In the worst case scenario, even, there's a negative correlation. That means if you have a plan, you are even less likely to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve.
Welcome to the Power of Respect podcast with Charlie Leichtweis, author of the book, The Power of Respect in Business. Charlie is one of America's foremost authorities on respect and leadership development. And now, here's Charlie.
Welcome to the Power of Respect podcast. I'm very excited today to welcome my guest, Torsten Pieper. Torsten is one of the world's leading experts in family business. He's an associate professor of management at the Bell College of Business at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte. He also serves as visiting professor with the Family Enterprise Center of the Keenan Flagler Business School at UNC Charlotte, or Chapel Hill rather. He is president of the International Family Enterprise Center and president of the International Family Enterprise Research Academy, which is the largest association of family business research in the world. Perhaps his most important area of expertise and experience comes from the fact that Torsten grew up in a multinational family business where he learned family business from the ground up. Today we'll be discussing the power of respect in family businesses. Welcome, Torsten.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Our pleasure as well. So let's get started then, and hopefully we have a great conversation that informs our audience from your experience how the power of respect works on all levels of businesses. Well, let's start with you first. Tell me, how did you get started in your career?
So, as you already mentioned in your very kind introduction, I come from a family business myself. So we have a long tradition of entrepreneurs in the family, and my father and mother, they started a business right around the 1980s. We used to make PVC profiles for windows and doors. So construction supplies to make windows and doors. And that company, of course, was always around. It was always a topic at home, and of course, a lot of what we did and talked about was always revolving around the business. So this business was always present in my mind, and then I went to study business administration, but not really knowing what I wanted to do. So I found out later on, my father very much had hoped that I join him in the business, but as I was studying, I picked up what they call the academic bug. I developed an interest for the research on family businesses. And just to give a little bit more context, so this is a relatively young field of research and scientific interest compared to the other fields like economics and so forth. So it really started in the early 1980s that researchers noticed, wait a minute, there's something of interest here. It's different if a business is managed and owned by a family, and we need to look at those differences more precisely. So this is from the perspective of how the field of research started. And right around the 2000s, so I remember I was sitting in a lecture. I was studying in France at that time, and the professor shared some research that he and a few others did on differences between family and non-family firms. And that was something that was really interesting to me. And I walked up to him later on after the lecture and said, can I perhaps see this research you did and learn a little bit more about it? Because it reminded me of a lot of the things that we talk about at home and the conversations we have. And he said, sure. And that really got me excited and interested about the research side of family business, and we started to work together. He became my mentor, and after a while I said, you seem to enjoy this. You might want to think about getting a doctorate once you're done with your master's. And that never had occurred to me, but this is how I started out then, and became an academic. And since I've been spending my time kind of researching family businesses, and with the idea of really through the research, hopefully creating insights, knowledge that will be useful to the families and the businesses that are out there. That's just kind of what our vision and mission is with the research. And then with these associations that we have, like the International Family Enterprise Research Academy, we try to build a platform where researchers really from all around the world can exchange, learn from one another, and do more of this work in a concerted effort. Because the fact of the matter is family businesses are a global phenomenon, and all economies are essentially driven by family businesses. We just did a study here in the United States where we saw that 87% of all businesses, of course, depending on how you define it, but up to 80 something percent of all businesses are family businesses. So it's a huge part of the economy. And however, it's a model that's not really taught a whole lot in business schools, and hopefully we'll change it, because the more of that we do, of course, the more aware people are of the issues that you might experience through having family in business, and then also manage them adequately and use family as a resource.
Yeah, I think that the family business platform is a unique opportunity to look at the impacts of leadership. And as you know, I have a significant interest in the leadership side of things and the dynamic of respect as it relates to trust, relationships, and ultimately the leadership role. And I think family businesses benefit from those concepts as well. So you have significant leadership experience working with a number of organizations across a number of businesses. Can you share what some of the biggest challenges you faced as a leader and as a teacher, and maybe how you tackled them, and perhaps share both some that worked well and some that were examples of maybe what we should avoid?
Yes, certainly. So we are, through the research, really are in a privileged position to work with, speak with a lot of family businesses. It's really a very applied type of research that we do. So that's really something I enjoy a lot, and that gives a lot of meaning to the work. Some of the things, I think some of the challenges that we often see, you see them in family businesses, but across organizations, but really across all parts of the world, is how are we able to position ourselves in a highly volatile environment and world, right? You're probably familiar with Clayton Christensen, the Harvard professor, came up with this theory of disruptive innovation, and a fantastic researcher, brilliant man, and just a very, very generous person overall. Passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately. But Clay often said, the great unfairness in life is, as beautiful as it is we have to make decisions for the future with data of the past. And that is just the fact. And that may drive us nuts, but that's what it is. So then what do? Well, we develop all sorts of plans and think we can predict the future, right? And put a lot of effort into planning things to the iota, precise, because we think we can predict the future. And the more we do this, we think the better we are at predicting the future. And fortunately, that does not work. When you look at the research, as a matter of fact, you will see that there is no correlation between a plan and any sort of success. In the worst case scenario, even, there's a negative correlation. That means if you have a plan you are even less likely to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. So that's even worse. And then we can come up with all kinds of explanation why that is. Well, oftentimes it's escalation of commitment to a failing course of action, right? Because we've put so much effort and resources into developing this plan, we're unwilling to give it up. Well, things change around us. We know the plan is not working, but still we're unwilling to change because so much researches were poured into this. And then to the leadership element of all this, then of course, if you create an environment around yourself where nobody questions those decisions because of something that we call groupthink, right? I don't want to be the bad person in the room here and point out the weakness. I know it's not going to work, but I don't want to upset the boss, right? Or in family business, I'm not going to mess with mom or dad because that's going to be unpleasant.
That could be fatal.
Exactly. Or with my cousins, oh gosh, we already are, have a conflict now. If I call him or her out in front of the board of directors saying this plan is not working and here are the reasons why, gosh, that's going to be a war. So I'm not going to do this. See, and then I'm sure you have counted numerous cases, situations where it's just downhill from there. And we saw that very clearly through this pandemic, right? Businesses, organizations who were able to change and to pivot in a brilliant and in a very fast way, and others who were not, because they just could not grasp that the world has changed. And there's a good example here in town. There's it's a restaurant bar. It's called ... I don't know if you've been. It's a really nice place to go for drinks. So remember, the pandemic happened, and we couldn't go and gather anymore. So for a bar, right, or restaurant place, that's really, really challenging because you're used to having people sitting at your counter and you serving them. There's no people sitting at the counter anymore. Well, I guess we're going to close down. That's what many places unfortunately did. Now, the folks at ... they were able to change their orientation in a way that they said, wait a minute, the people cannot come to us. Maybe we can come to the people. And they created cocktail kits, right? Little baskets, with cocktails and some crackers and other things, and said, you pay online, we put them in front of the door, absolutely contactless, right? You pick them up, and then after in the evening, we throw a Zoom party and we show you some tricks how you get your cocktails fixed up.
Nice. That's
changing your orientation, right? And adjusting your mindset to a changed world. But that's challenging.
I think that it's definitely challenging. I think that's a great example of where change happened. And I'm going to go back to your comment on, when people make a plan and the escalating commitment that sometimes goes around that, and perhaps the unwillingness of other family members or people lower in an organization to challenge it. Yep. How do you see the element in family business of being able to talk about change, try not to have conflict about that, and yet manage the family dynamics? To me, there's a huge element of the technique of respect that could fit in there.
Absolutely.
If you could kind of share what you've witnessed in that regard, maybe in examples of day-to-day operation. Now, you gave an example of a business that succeeded. I don't know what the conversations were. I don't know whether there was a bunch of arguments before they did it. But if you have some examples of where you witnessed the concept of respect and its impact on family businesses in day-to-day operations, both good or bad, and family interaction and decision-making.
No, you're spot on, Charlie, with your comment. It has to do a lot with respect, because what do we mean by respect? When you think about the word respect, right? It's really two words. It's re and spect, and both come from Latin, right? Re means again, and spectare is to look. So it really means to look again, right? Respect, or that's one way of describing it, but that's the root of the word. So if we say, well, look, again, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to question what it is that we do, and the real good families and the real good businesses and organizations or groups out there, they constantly question what it is that they do. Is this really, are we really serving our customers the way that they want to be served? Is there a better way of doing this? They also have a tremendous amount of humility. This is something that is very pronounced in family businesses, where you have people who work really hard, who have accomplished a lot, and many times are extremely wealthy and resourceful, but they are some of the most humble people that you will meet. And
right.
That, I think, is something that is important, because something that also means, look, this is extremely fragile what we're doing, and at any moment it could collapse and fly into our face. So let's work really hard to do our best to not let that happen, right? So what do then some families do? I think with respect, if you want to respect others, we have to start with respecting yourself. I think if you cannot respect yourself, then how are you going to respect others? So if you challenge yourself to rethink, I think you have it in your book, Charlie. There's a great quote by, I think, Abraham Lincoln, right? He said, he was known to say, "I don't like that man. I must get to know him better."
Exactly.
And that's exactly it. It's to think again, to look again. And maybe the other person's right. Maybe I am wrong, right? And yes, we know how often emotional things create great conflicts in family business, and this all swaps then over to the employees. And that's really sad when these things happen. So something to do about this, and we see some families do, is they start very early with developing, I think, a sense of responsibility, but also self-esteem amongst their members. And they have a system figured out that lets them all do this, of course, with variations, because you don't want to have clones, exact copy of one another running around there. No, there's beauty and there's strength and diversity, of course, but generally they all buy into this idea of, look, we need to do something with our family because we need to manage it just as well as we manage the business, because if we don't, the family manages itself. And usually what happens is that you focus on your core family, meaning parents and children. Maybe there's room for a grandparent in there, but that is often not the case. So really core family, parents and children, and you neglect that your tribe is much, much larger. So saying the things that we see work is very early on, usually starting with age 3 to 5. You have to teach your children that actions have consequences. Right? If you do this, then this is going to happen. Right? Children have a way of figuring this out themselves. So it's through experimenting. But if you you don't want to let this happen, of course. But if you put your hand on this hot oven plate, it's going to hurt you. And I can tell you that, or you can figure it out yourself. But actions are consequences. Also, if we say, right, these are the boundaries of where you can play and go. If you cross those boundaries, then it has consequences. So usually between the ages 3 to 5, that's a good range to teach those things. Then moving on, the role of money, right? What do we need money for, and what do we do in order to make money, and what are the trade-offs, right? I remember with my own children, so they're 13 and 10 now. When they were younger, and at home playing, and I had to leave for work. They go, "Oh, can you not stay and play?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'd love to, right? And there's nothing else I'd rather do. But look, I take some of the time that we have together away, so I could go work and earn money, and with that money we can go on vacation or buy toys or something like that." So there's a lot of opportunities that you can teach your children those the role of trade-offs. This is usually around ages 6 to 9, where their mind is kind of ripe to teach these things.
Mm-hmm. Those are great examples, and what some of this comes down to, in order to connect with people and provide them with an opportunity to express themselves, is the communication process and how that works and how you approach it. And it's interesting in my experience, and I'm an analytical person, so when somebody starts telling me there's this issue, I'm immediately, in my mind, I'm like, down the road, I've got the answer, I know where they're going, and they're looking at me like, you're not listening to me. And even though I think I am, I'm giving them the signal that I'm not listening to them, and that means that's going to turn them off and turn them out and tune them out. So, one of the techniques, and I did put this in my book that somebody taught me a while ago. This gentleman was so good at connecting with people he'd never met before, including people he didn't necessarily care for their opinions. And I said to John, "John, how do you do that? You're so smart about it." I said, "But I'm a smart person, so how can I do?" And he said to me, "I'll give you 2 words." He said, "Listen longer." And when you do that, it's very, the people now understand you are listening to them. And most importantly, you may find, to your point, Torsten, you may find that where they're going with it or what their issue is not what you had presumed in advance. And so I think those kind of techniques are important relative to the communication process that these families use to make sure that, the discussion of change is not always a conflict. What effective communication strategies have you used, and why do you feel they were successful? Can you give us some examples of that?
Before I do that, I want to stress your point, Charlie. You're right with the communication. That's something that's really interesting when you look at communication and the research, or just walk into a bookstore and pick up some books on communication. They stress a lot. They put a lot of emphasis on the role of speaking, but not listening. Right? It's almost as if it's granted. But you're right. Being a good and attentive listener, right? That's a mastery that is just as important as the talking part. And oftentimes I find it really, really revealing, but also satisfying when you sit down with people and just listen to them. Now that has to do with respect too, because and this is all connected to the other things that we mentioned earlier. See, why do things go so often so wrong, and why do people fight? It is often because our egos are in our way, right? Coming back to the business or the planning example, of course, this plan is brilliant because I made it, because I'm brilliant, right? Well, it's huge. That's a huge ego, right? That is sort of jumping at you right there. And we have this. Well, we have this so often in all sorts of circumstances. Now, also with the listening part too, right? We have a tendency to jump in. Somebody shares what their problems or something, and our tendency is to immediately jump in and pull something similar out of our memory. Oh yeah, that happened to me too, right? And let me show you how I went about this. Now you're making the conversation not about the other person and his problems. It's about you, well, essentially trying to show off, right? Hey, this is what happened to me, and this is what I did. See, and I believe, I fundamentally believe that people are good and they mean well by doing it, right? They try to help the person, but they're actually not helping.
Right.
The help that they need is just for you to listen, maybe ask one or the other clarifying question, or things like, how did that make you feel? That must have been really, really challenging. How did you feel when you were going through this, right? Or just these things like that. Or if they share something where you can put it into perspective for them. For example, let's assume that was to happen. What is the worst thing you think that could come out of this? And then they think usually, and whatever they say is actually not that bad, right? It's like I haven't talked to my father in 2 years. Well, why don't you pick up the phone and call him? Well, I don't know if he's not gonna pick up the phone. Well, you're already not talking. Right? So is that really the worst thing that can happen? No. Well, perhaps he's gonna yell at me. Okay, but all of this, right? And whatever they say, all of this is fixable, right? But usually they come once they share then their thoughts with you, they come to realize that whatever it is, it's actually not that bad. And then they usually say to themselves, you know what? It's actually not the big deal. Yeah, I should do that. Oh, I give it a try, right? And I think, and the greatest the moments of satisfaction are, I think, when, to me at least, when people figure these things out on their own, right? That's the most beautiful thing, I think, is as a consultant or somebody working with families in business, but when they're able to figure it out on your own, and you essentially worked yourself out of the job. That's what good advisors do. They don't want to hang around forever.
Right.
They want to give the people the tools that they need and empower them to do these things themselves, and then disappear and let them lead their life, right? Of course, we know some of the not so good examples who just try to hang around and make a living off of those families. That's of course not something we want. But ideally, you want to give the people the tools that they can do these things on their own. And I think this notion of listening is an important one. There's a colleague mentioned this to me the other day. There's a good book out there that's called, I think, "You Don't Listen" is the title. I added in my shopping cart to get it. It seems to be really, really helpful for that listening aspect. Yes.
Mm-hmm. No, those are very important. In fact, your point about having people come to the conclusion themselves and how to improve or do, it's more sustainable. I mean, they've internalized and they can, in fact, then execute it on a more consistent basis going forward in terms of their improvement.
That's right.
Which I believe brings satisfaction and joy to them as well.
You're exactly right. Yes, and a lot of this too has to do and to make it also very clear that, look, this is not easy. It's not. It's actually really, really hard, right? And but the good news is like the story you shared with your friend there. But listen longer. Look, everybody's smart. You can figure this out, right? It's just requiring dedication, commitment, right, and hard work. But you can get there. Now, if you're not willing to do the work, then we need to see what is keeping you from not wanting to do it.
Right.
But people can do this, yes, and giving them tools at hand, I think, is really important.
Oh, sorry. And those tools, as you mentioned, those put people in a position to be successful for themselves, and it's something that encourages them to step outside their comfort zone. But the fact is that they can do that with help, and it's okay to get help. It's okay to help other people. It's important, and that speaks to the relationship side of respect, which I think is a hallmark of leadership. So.
You're exactly right. Yes, and that's something that's important to stress too, Charlie. And you have that a lot with patriarchs, right? Family businesses when you tell them, look, there are some psychological issues going on here, And if you do not get to them, all you do is you're just trying to minimize the symptoms of the problems that you have. If you really want to cure the problems, we have to look at these psychological underlying tensions that are going on. And then usually what happens, of course, the patriarchs, they think, oh my God, you want to put me on a couch or something like that, right? Because when you start with psychology, emotions, that's all wishy-washy stuff. And to exactly your point about getting help, I find analogies are tremendously useful in these circumstances. You can say something like, look, if you have problems with your golf game, right? If you constantly off the tee are slicing your drive, what do? Well, I go to see my pro to fix it. Exactly. If your cooking is not pleasing your family members, what do? Maybe I sign up for a cooking class. Exactly. You get help. Now, let's take this a step further. You cannot figure out these emotional and psychological issues. What do? Well, I guess I need to get help. Exactly. And that's absolutely fine. And there's nothing bad or wrong with it. It's like, we have a problem. Let's figure it out. If we cannot figure it out on our own, well, let's get some help.
And good leaders promote that cultural aspect as well, including, within family conditions. And again, we all know that we're all human beings, so it's not like we're not going to make mistakes, but it's important to figure out when and how to do that as best as possible.
That's exactly right. And also to create, and this is why this is so challenging, right? To create a culture in the organization where people feel empowered to point out problems and challenges before they blow in your face. Figuring that out, creating that culture, I think that is key to being able to change and to adapt quickly, because look at how organizations are structured. Look who gets promoted and who gets the nice assignments and the nice jobs and the pat on the back. It's usually the people who bring you the good news, right? Right. However, what you really want to do, and Toyota, I share is in a little bit here an example from Toyota. What you really want is you want to hear the bad news. You want to hear the problems where people go, you know what? I think we're about to lose that customer. And if we don't do something about it, then, they're gone. Okay, what can we do? And don't tell me in 5 months when we've lost the customer. Oh, well, then it's too late. So Toyota, and this also speaks to operational issues. For example, with Toyota, they're a family business, right? The Toyota family majority owner and is also involved in various management control positions. So Toyota has a system, I don't know if they still do it, but they had a system in place for their assembly lines where people would get rewards for the most problems that they brought to the managers. Like a paid vacation for the entire family. I mean, something really meaningful and important to them, right? So the challenge was bring us problems, bring us ideas, what can be improved, but really we want to hear the problems, right?
Right.
And the more you bring, the better. Now, that turns your thinking upside down, right? Because again, we want to hear the good news, and the bad news is like, I gotta look at this now, right? But this is exactly what makes you better. This is really where, respect comes in. And there's somebody from the shop floor who walks up to the manager. The manager probably doesn't even know the person, right? So many levels below, but the employee feels empowered to approach the manager and say, you know what, there's a problem with this machine or with this whole system. And if we don't address it, it's going to create major issues. Now that's a culture you want, but that requires a lot of work and conscious effort to make it happen. That's also the reason why so many strategies fail, right? I think it's, was it Henry Mintzberg or, no, it was Peter Drucker who was known to say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Right,
exactly. Right.
That's why so many strategies don't make it because the culture kills it.
And I refer to that as in my terms and but I call that the culture of respect. And it goes back to the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Listening to people, empowering them to say, and when they come and tell you a problem, you don't punish them for it or blame them for it or things like that.
That's right. That's like in Rome under the Emperor Nero, right? The messenger with the bad news got fed to the lions.
Right.
And you have that in the organizations too, unfortunately, to this day, and that's really, really bad. And you're killing so much creativity but also sensors that might help you find the bad news before it finds you,
right? And
you can enable you to act on it while there is still time to act on it. And yeah, that's really hard. But there's this role of respect and being able to speak up and not feeling like, oh, if I say this, maybe it's not going to hit me right away. But especially now in the family business, I know when we sit together for dinner, I'm gonna get it back. I'm gonna get it back, and I'm gonna get it back bad.
Yeah.
So then that means, well, I'm not gonna do anything because I don't wanna be chastised in front of the family, and
exactly right.
Be positioned as the bad guy or gal in the group, and yeah, unfortunately that happens, but. I think with the things that you mentioned with your approach, I think those are definitely helpful.
Well, I think this has been a great conversation. I do have one more question, if I may. If you're speaking with an up and coming leader, what advice would you give them from your perspective?
I would say, to first of all, to check your ego, right? Lower, get rid of that ego, check it at the door, because that prevents us really from a lot of things. That prevents us from seeing, but it also prevents us from hearing a lot of things that we really need to hear in order to grow, right? So that the second point is surround yourself with people who can be mentors to you, but also I have this policy where what I try to do is at least when to surround myself with people where you are always the dumbest person in the room, so to speak.
Right.
Because that's where you have great opportunities to learn and to grow, and also to have people around you who will call you out when you do when you mess up, right? And who tell you, look, Torsten, that you just said something, did something that was just that was really bad. Now again, with our egos, right, our self-defense mechanism, it's like, I don't want to hear it, get away, everything's fine. Well, again, drop the ego, say, oh my God, I had no idea, right? Think again, right? Look at it again. What did I do there, right? And of course the criticism hurts, right? And we don't like that. It's our psyche playing tricks with us. We so want those compliments and the nice words, so we get that shoot of feel-good hormones to our body, and we feel warm and fuzzy and loved, right? And the opposite, we don't want that criticism because it feels like, ooh, I'm bad. The group may kick me out, and then our survival instincts set in, and like, oh crap. Pardon my language, but without a group, I'm not going to survive, right? This goes back to us, roaming through the Sahara and living in caves in other parts of the world. Without a group, I'm done. Okay, now I'm called out. Ooh, I don't want that, right? So it's all of this is really primed from our evolutionary background. So we don't want that criticism. However, that's what we need to grow. That's what we need to learn. So surround yourself with people who are mentors, but who will call you out, who will challenge you, because they see the growth and the potential in you, right? I think that's something that I try to do as much, and I have some wonderful people in my life that I'm really grateful to call, mentors, but also really good friends. But yeah, I also know that, and I'm grateful to them that they call me out if wander off or mess up, or don't deliver by the time I said I would deliver something, or whatever it is. And that's something I think really important, together with checking your ego at the door.
I think that's critical advice and very important advice. Well, I appreciate your time. I want to thank you, Torsten, for being with us today.
Absolutely.
And I especially want to thank you, the listeners, for the episode of The Power of Respect. If you like what you heard today, please consider sharing this podcast and visiting our website, expertsinhow.com. And if you'd like to read my book, The Power of Respect in Business, is available on Amazon. So thanks again for listening. And remember, respect builds trust. Trust builds relationships, which is the hallmark of leadership. Thank you very much.
This has been the Power of Respect podcast with Charlie Leichtweis, author of the book, The Power of Respect in Business. To listen to more episodes and to learn about Charlie's leadership development programs, visit his website, expertsinhow.com.